Welcome to the Equestrian Pulse Podcast, equestrian bloggers taking the pulse of the horse world. Let's meet our bloggers.
Hi everyone, this is Louise Dando from In Due Horse. In Due Horse is a horse girl's lifestyle blog which talks about everything horsey, including equestrian travel, events, fashion and interviews, and it also follows my adventures here in France.
This is Heather Wallace of The Timid Rider. I talk about my journey as a returning adult equestrian, sometimes lacking in confidence, but always determined to be bold in and out of the saddle.
Hi everyone, this is Andrea Parker from the Sandorina Ballerina. I'm a dressage rider from Queensland, Australia.
Hello, on this episode of the Equestrian Pulse Podcast, author Kade gives us some tips about riding better and more often. So all of you bloggers and riders out there, make sure you stay tuned. So welcome. We're going to just jump right in. I'm super excited to have you finally on the Equestrian Pulse Podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me and having me on the show. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be a guest.
I'm excited too. And now all of our chatting can actually be maybe helpful towards somebody.
Yes, we do talk frequently. Yes, that we do.
Yes. And so, our call later today will have, will be more social and I will probably have a glass of wine, but for now I will pretend to be professional. So for those who are just joining in, I am on with my dear friend Kade, who is an author of equestrian fiction and romance. She is most known for her In the Rein series, but she's got some other talents that we're going to be talking about. And specifically for some of our bloggers out who listen to us, we're going to touch on the topic of writing and secrets to writing faster and more often, which a lot of us really struggle with, myself included. I am on a writing spree though, so I will say I go in fits and bursts, but I think this will help all of us. So Carly, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and, how you got into writing, what you write, blah, 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 whatever.
All right. Well, you just summed me up pretty darn well there, but I am a independent author. I do write equestrian romance because that is something that's near and dear to my heart. I write about handsome horse trainers and a wannabe cowgirl who's a little Bridget Jones-like along the way. She has a lot of trials and tribulations with horse ownership, returning to horse ownership after a long break living in New York City. So they're very dear and near to my heart currently. My In the Rein series, I'm working on book 4. And wow. This one kind of travels off. And I'm like you, I'm on a writing streak at the same time. So I believe JD's story will be finished this year, which is very exciting. And while I've been writing in fits and starts, just like you, I've been doing a lot of dabbling into helping myself and other authors write faster and more often, because I think that is one of our hugest stumbling blocks when it comes to getting a book project or any writing project or really any work we're passionate about done, right? How do we find the time and how do we get more words on the page? So I am now a creativity coach and I help authors who struggle with this very thing. So I thought this would be a great topic for us to discuss today.
I really do think it is because, for all the bloggers that do listen to us or for even the people at home who maybe aren't necessarily writers, but who are interested in books or interested in getting into writing or something like that, it's all about time management and inspiration. And I think we can all use a little help with that from time to time, myself absolutely included, because you are much better than me with your focus. I tend to have a lot of different things going on all the time. And so I struggle with kind of being focused on one thing at a time really well. So I'm very excited to chat with you. And don't forget, as we end, we're going to have everybody, you're going to have to drop your website, drop all that stuff so people can maybe follow up with questions if they have any for you.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to do that for sure. And what you were talking about, I think is a very normal struggle for authors. Some of us write part-time. Others of us, we write as much as we can, but we have other things that demand our time. We're horse people, right? So we have to take care of the horses. Many of us have spouses or families that we have to manage time around that. We have side hustles, side businesses. We have full-time corporate jobs. So I think trying to fit writing in is always a challenge for an author. Or finding time for those passion projects is always a challenge for people. Someone recently asked me, do I find writing exhausting or exhilarating? And I think what's really interesting about this is thinking about writing for me is exhausting, right? When I think about sitting down to write, it exhausts me. But when I actually focus and sit down to do the writing, my muse shows up and leads me, and that part is exhilarating, right? So it's like a teeter-totter, it's a give and take. And so I think jumping off from that spot, is it exhausting or exhilarating? We can get into talking a little bit about some of the strategies I use to write faster and more often. And what I know from experience and from talking with other authors on my Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast is that sitting down and starting to write is often the most difficult part for an author or for a blogger. Sitting down to do the work is the most challenging.
The motivation,
part.
I think, right? Like the actual motivation to kind of kick you in the butt and be like, let's do this.
Right. Or touching back to that exhausting part, we spend so much time thinking about the magnitude of a book project or the magnitude of a project, rather than dialing back and thinking, what can I do right now? What small task can I do right now to move this writing project forward, right? So before we get into my little secret on how to actually do that and get out of the overwhelm stage, I wanted to talk about setting the scene, right?
Ooh, sexy.
Yeah, baby. So people say it takes about, researchers say, scientists say that it takes about 21 days to start a habit. And knowing that about yourself, I think the most important thing to touch on is create a writing schedule that works for you and stick to it. That is easier said than done, I know. But for me, in my writing life, what I've discovered is I'm best if I sit down first thing in the morning and do my creative writing then. One, because I'm fresh. Two, I haven't stepped into my business life, so I haven't, checked emails or social media. I haven't looked at my to-do list, all the things that must be done that day. And I always feel better having worked on my passion project first before the have-tos of the day show up. Of course, I go out and I feed the horses first and all that good stuff. But sitting down and taking care of myself first thing, the thing that's most important, which is getting my creative work done, my writing, has been very helpful for me. For other people, that may be after dinner or in the evening or on their lunch breaks. It doesn't matter when. The most important thing is committing to yourself to create that writing routine where you touch your book, you touch your story, you touch your passion project every single day, no matter what.
I think that's really good. And two, I like the no matter what, because it leaves that open-ended, right? So you might not feel your muse or your inspiration strike, but the very act of putting pen to paper or putting your fingers on the keyboard and just writing, even if it's nonsense, free writing, tends to unleash a whole bunch of stuff. So even if you don't feel the need, it's good to just do it and at least get that started so you get into a habit.
Absolutely. And part of creating a habit is, this is the tricky part about the human mind. We have, things trigger us, right? So part of creating that writing habit is, one, just making that commitment to yourself to write every day, but two, create a ritual of it. And this is going into designing your environment, right? So for me, I have a space. It's my creative space. It's where I always work on my novel. It happens to be my office where I'm sitting right now. For other people, that might be a particular coffee shop. For some people, that might be, it's a desk or a certain chair or a certain spot, right? Like, so your mind gets more into that creative mode or that flow when you have a ritual you start to follow. Also, as a part of my creative ritual, I always write in the same spot, but I do little things that kick my brain into gear and say, okay, it is time to write. So for me, since I write in the morning, it's pouring that cup of coffee in one of my favorite writing mugs, and then I sit down at my desk and I light a citrus scented candle.
Oh, that's great for energizing.
It is. I thought you'd appreciate that. You know, the citrus smell, it stirs your senses and wakes you up, right? Because mornings can be groggy. I also have a lemon scented essential oil that I put on. And that's sort of my writing routine. It gets me in the mood. And then I sit down and I open my document and I keep track of my word count, which is also a motivator. I put my journal down next to my computer and I log how long I've written, and I log what page I've stopped on, and I log how many words I created in my writing session. So it's like this habit. And then I put on some relaxing writing music, Mozart to stimulate the mind, or I like movie soundtracks. So that is my ritual, which is part of my habit, which is part of my routine. So it kicks my mind into, okay, this is writing time.
You're very organized.
It wasn't always
I am nowhere near that organized.
It wasn't always
Can
like
you
this.
Tell that in my writing? No, I think it's good because again, it's like that's what works for you, and it gets you in the mood, and it gets you organized body, organized brain, that kind of stuff. And I think I was talking with our friend Candace Rice about, are you a pantser or a planner, right? So do you write by your pants or do you plan things out? And I'm definitely a pantser. I sit down and I might have great ideas that I jot down on Siri when I'm driving in the car, and I later will kind of come back to them. But it's a lot of organized chaos. So I love that, because maybe if I set up a ritual, that might help me organize my brain a little bit.
Well, and I have to be honest with you, I am also a pantser. I write by the seat of my pants, and I've tried the plotting structure, and I'm a lot like you, Heather. I will chat into my phone while I'm driving. I'll take notes on little sticky sheets everywhere. I have notes everywhere. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and write things down. But what I do is I get them out so they don't like whirl around in my head, because if you don't catch them, then they're gone, poof, right? So I'll write them down, but then I take all those notes to my writing sessions and I include them in the ritual of them putting them in the document or whatever I'm working on. The funny thing about the pantser conversation, it's like I truly believe I have like an out of body experience when I write. Like my characters are the ones telling the story. Like
they tell the story, right?
Yeah, I don't know where I'm going or where I go while I'm in the writing process. But I've actually heard pantsing called discovery writing, which I think sounds a little more lovely.
Sounds nicer.
Being a pantser, like you're about to fly off the roller coaster or be bucked off at the Bronco at any second. So now, writers.
Yeah, I know. I like that better. Better. Discovery writing. That makes me sound much more creative than pantser.
Absolutely. But that's the thing about creativity and about the muse. It's like you have to go with what works for you. You can try plotting and see if that works, but if it doesn't, stick with what gets the words on the page, which will only be assisted by creating a little bit of a ritual and a routine around your writing style.
So I don't want to divert you, but I have a question, because I find that, and maybe this is part of that ritual, part of that habit making, but I find that when the muse strikes and I get into this creative process and I start writing, then it kind of, what's the thing, like domino effect, where it's in my brain all the time and it's at the forefront of my brain. So I'll be sitting there and I'm so sorry, I have to go write this down. And then my husband will come in and he's like, well, you didn't do this. And I was like, I'm in the middle of a chapter. Like I cannot stop right now. And, but meanwhile, I might go a week or two and I've got nothing.
What's really interesting about that is, yes, I've had the same experience. I totally know what you're talking about. What's interesting about that is like an amazing experience to have that burst and sit down and write that. What I've found, because I was a lot like that in the beginning, I'd write these huge bursts, I'd sit down for a long time, and then I wouldn't touch it for a really long time. What I found in creating the routine and the ritual is that when I touch my novel every day for a given amount of time, sometimes I'll write more than just my writing session, but I at least know I'm always going to touch it every day during that writing session. And what I find is the book stays more alive in my subconscious as I go throughout my day doing other things. So then I'm making notes all day long that I can bring back to my next writing session. And it's not as difficult to get back into the flow of connecting with your book again. Because if I take a big break, I find that I have to go back and read several chapters, get back into the rhythm. And that's time where I could have been moving the book forward and writing. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just feel like it's easier on the writer to just touch it a little bit a day. Sometimes it's 200 words. It's not even that many, or sometimes it might be just reading back something that you wrote, but you're with your book every day in some sort of fashion. And that keeps the story like really fresh in your mind, working on it behind the scenes.
I think that's really good because like the new book project I'm working on, I got very upset because I had it a third of the way done and then my computer ate it.
I heard that. I was so sorry to hear that.
I don't cry, but I cried. I was absolutely a baby. And, you can't get that back because even if you have ideas, like you lost a lot, and you can't ever duplicate it. So, I had to put it to bed for a little while and just grieve that before coming back. But
yeah, that is just heartbreaking to hear something like that happen, because I believe it's, for me anyway, it's true. If you lose something like that, it's very hard to recreate what you think you might have already had. And I'll share a tip with you that I use because I'm paranoid that will happen to me.
Yeah.
What I do is after every writing session, I print the chapters I've written and I just keep building the manuscript that way. So I always have a hard copy. And then I actually ask my husband at the end of every writing week to read back to me the chapters that I've completed, so that kind of
you can hear it.
I can hear it, because reading something sounds very different than listening to something, and so we're starting to move into an audiobook sort of world. So you have to be conscious of how things sound when they're being read aloud. But then that still keeps the story alive. So I have the hard copy. I'm reviewing what I've written. I'm making adjustments as he's reading it to me, catching typos along the way before it goes to my next editor. So it's so that could be a way to help that not ever happen to you again. It's print what you've
that's
written.
good, because even the backup was just so mangled, and but I like what you said about the audiobook, because I had a very weird out of body experience. I chose, because both Girl Forward and Confessions of a Timid Writer are now under review at Audible, and the audiobooks are done and waiting to be released. To listen after years, right? It's been a couple of years since I published them. And then to listen to someone speaking my words back to me is the most odd thing that I've encountered as an author so far. Very weird.
It is strange and awesome at the same time.
Awesome.
When I heard my audiobooks read by my wonderful narrator, I mean, it's like she's like acting and giving life into my characters that you imagine in your head, and then you're hearing it. And it's like, Heather, you have created something that never existed before. And now you have it in these different formats, digital, paperback, audiobook now for people to hear. Like, you're an author. I mean, and it's shocking and exciting to hear these things and see these things and read these things and hold these things, so it's something to be celebrated.
Absolutely. And it's like, if I think about it, I get a little overwhelmed sometimes. I'm just like, did I do that? But I think it's good, because when you're wanting to be a writer, when you're wanting to be an author, the whole idea of getting to where we've already gotten is so overwhelming. So these steps are so important to help people get there. And I just touching back, even like before we proceed, when you say about breaking it down into smaller steps that are actionable and you can achieve, those are all confidence building steps that I talk about even when we're looking at our writing, horses and all that, because if you can't break it down, how can you see the bigger picture? You just have to do something that you can achieve, and then build your confidence and move forward with. So I love these steps.
Absolutely.
So what's the next one?
Yes, I was going to say, so we've covered, create a writing schedule and stick to it, create that habit. And we've talked about designing your environment, and developing a starting ritual. And then this one is so important. You have to remove distractions.
Good luck.
Yes. I mean, so multitasking
Yes.
creates the death of creativity. You may think it doesn't, and you may think you can, and women in particular are very good at multitasking. And I am guilty of this too. But I realized that I was wasting so much time being distracted that I have now, with my writing sessions, I turn the ringer off on my phone. I turn all notifications off on my computer. I don't go as far as turning off my internet connection, because sometimes I use it to look something up or research something or use the thesaurus. But I let, the household know, this is my writing time. I cannot be disturbed. And what's wonderful about that is it really does work, because you can get hyper focused and really connect with what you're writing and move faster. We're in such a connected world. It's actually good for your soul to unplug for a second too. But this is difficult, right? Because we all think we need to be available exactly and precisely at the moment that anybody wants or needs us, and we have other things that we're dealing with. But my next step, let's talk about this for a second, but the next step really addresses too, like, how do I be disconnected for a long period of time while I'm working or writing? So how about you? How's the distraction for you while you're writing?
Well, I have 3 kids and a dog that yells at me until I sit down next to him. So I'm no longer allowed to work in my office. He must sit next to me on the couch. So that is a little distracting. But no, it is what it is. It's one of those things, like, I took a couple days of vacation. I use air quotes because who really ever gets a vacation when you're a mother and an entrepreneur or whatever. And I just put on my auto reply for emails. I put on my voicemail, and I just kind of unplugged that way, only checked it periodically for emergencies. And instead of taking a vacation, I wrote.
Well, that is a vacation though.
That's it.
I
mean, I don't know how my family felt about it a little bit, because again, mommy's always working, because they don't know the difference between me going and working on massage clients versus me sitting at home on the couch on the computer. They don't see that I'm actually, doing something like that. So I'm working on it. I do have a nice space, but I had to, like, even for recording this, I had to put my dogs in their crates and shoo everybody out of the vicinity to just have an hour to talk to you.
Mm-hmm. I understand. It is. It's like, how do you fit it in, right? How do you find the time?
But you know what? You've got me really thinking, because there's a time I do tend to sleep in, and my kids are all pretty self-sufficient. Like, there is no reason I can't get up at 6 a.m. every day, right, for 2 hours before the house wakes up. There's no reason I can't do that. And because even if someone were to wake up, they're used to being up on their own anyway. They probably wouldn't even notice I'm in my office.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I should take your advice on that. I feel like I would get a lot more done.
Well,
maybe finish that book.
Yeah. And here's the brilliant thing about creating a schedule, a ritual, a routine, and sticking to it, is it doesn't have to be that long. Like, often authors, when they sit down to write, this is the exhausting part. They think about the monumental amount of work that they have ahead of them. An 80,000 word book is, a challenge. They think about the end of the book. They think about, oh my gosh, I have to spend 4 hours writing this book. I have to, I really have to sit down and give it my all and force this chunk of time and these words to come out. But that actually is not the best strategy. You have to think in short chunks, like short bursts. So what I do with my writing routine is I scoop an hour out of my day first thing in the morning. And I tell myself, I am going to sit and I'm going to work on my project for an hour. But here's the really cool part, is I write in short bursts. I don't write for a whole hour straight. I set a time, I write, and then I stop and I get up and I stretch and I walk around. I don't get on the internet or anything. I just, look at the horses out the window or something. And then I sit back down and I write for another short burst. And then I get up and I stretch, I get a glass of water, refill my coffee, whatever. And then I write for another short burst. And that keeps my brain hyper focused in the moment, no distractions, just these short bursts for an hour long where I give myself frequent breaks to come up for air. Now, what happens when I do that is I often end up writing longer than an hour because the words are just charging out of me. But some days, you're not going to feel like sitting down to write, or you're going to have something else pressing that's really driving you, to do it. But I still, if anything, I'll sit down and I'll give myself 25 minutes. And I'm like, this is important to me. This is my project. I'm going to sit down and write on it. So it's always an hour. And what I've found is I come out of that hour and I've written almost every time over 1,000 words. So think about 1 hour every day, the progress you can make on a book, rather than sitting down once and trying to slog through 5 hours and then not touching your project for a really long time. You can really move a project along just dedicating an hour a day to getting the words on the page.
No, you really can. And I think a lot of people probably get stuck. And I know with, when we do our freelance writing and things like that, they give you a word count. Like, we want it to be between this and this. And I always find that I find the word count, I just kind of throw it, like I put it a little to the back of my mind and I say, I'm just going to write, and then I can go ahead and edit down, because I don't like to write towards that kind of goal. I'm more of a, let's just see where the story takes me. So, you have to go with what works for you. But like, I think some people really are like, I really would want to get to this amount of words. We have was that NaNoWriMo, the writing month. Mm-hmm. Yes, where you compete and you kind of, do a goal. And a lot of people really do well with that. I tried it. I did not do well with it. I'm better just kind of on my own, because there's some days, I'll sit down and I'll write like 3,000 or 4,000 words and I just like can't stop. But it's not a regular thing for me. And I think what happens is I get overexhausted. Mm-hmm. So I really do think, and especially for the bloggers out there, there's a lot of bloggers that talk about, getting drained and not being inspired. And so I think if they were to just sit down and write, every other day or every day and make a habit out of it, that wouldn't happen to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's not as daunting when you chunk it into short bursts and you give yourself, a structure within to work with. It's just not as overwhelming. And it's actually quite fun once you get going. Like I said, sitting down and starting to write is always the hardest part, because your mind is just, I have to do this, or what am I going to say, or I don't want to, but once you sit there, things start to move and magically happen. It's just getting your butt in the chair. That's why the rituals and the routines really help so much, because you don't even know what's happening, but you're shifting your focus to, it's creative time. So.
No, I like it. It's a subconscious, because you're basically telling yourself this is what needs to happen. And this is, and your body just immediately relax and opens up to it. So I think that's super helpful. I actually, now I'm just kind of I just want to get you off the Zoom call so I can start writing, because no, I'm kidding. I never want to get rid of you.
Well, if you were that inspired, I would say absolutely go for it.
No, but I am. I'm like, well, I get up at 6 a.m. usually when we do our chats for the podcast. Mm-hmm. And, 6 is a little early for me, but if I got up at like 6:30 every day and just wrote for half an hour to an hour just to get myself in the practice before the dogs woke up, before the kids woke up, like that's really good, because on the days where maybe I don't feel super inspired, maybe I just do some yoga or something and kind of get my body moving and just start getting into a good habit. All in.
Waking up early is a habit and a routine in and of itself, so it takes a good 21 days before your system kicks over, and that's just what you do. But eventually it won't feel forced. It'll be like, this is just what I do. And also I wanted to mention, sometimes I don't write every single day. I make a commitment to write every single day during the work week. And then on the weekends, I'll give myself a little bit more freedom to enjoy myself. Sometimes I'll write, but often that on the weekends is when my husband and I enjoy what I've written during the week. And I'm still touching my book, but it's in a different capacity. So
it's nice that
it's
you
okay to
have
take
your
a break.
husband to kind of partner with you and to be a listening ear.
Mhm.
How does he feel about you, just as a segue, writing romance? Like, is he jealous at all of your characters?
Oh, he thinks it's all about him.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say that would be the smart play, Carly.
little does he know. My inspiration comes from all sorts of different places, but I'll let him ride with that if he likes. So yeah.
Yeah. Let's let him think that, so he'll continue to help you with your writing.
Right, but that's actually the cool thing. My husband's not much of a reader. I mean, I think the only book series he's ever completed besides mine was The Hunger Games. So the fact that he actually enjoys reading my books is pretty cool. And I think, he's learning a little bit more about the cowboy lifestyle and, the horse world from reading my books. So the fact that he's a man, he's a converted horse owner and lover because he married me, and he's actually still enjoying my books, I think is a good sign.
No, that is a good sign, because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for me, I feel like my husband is my biggest supporter and my biggest critic. So if I do something or I write something that doesn't jive, like, I will hear about it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, don't get me wrong. I mean, my husband is like my first editor. If he says this does not make sense to me, or I didn't like that, or that word's too big, it's like I take that feedback. He's gentle, thank heaven, because you always have to be gentle when you're critiquing someone's creative endeavors, because it comes from the heart, and it can be very difficult to hear strong disapproval or words. So he's gentle, and I appreciate that. But I do take that feedback into account. I take all feedback into account, and it only makes me a better writer. But I hear you. You have to be very careful about who you choose in the early stages of your writing, whom you share it with. You have to be very careful about that.
Yeah, it's like giving your baby to somebody. You're entrusting them with something that's a very special gift and very near and dear to your heart. And it may need to grow, but you don't necessarily want to hear that your baby's ugly. So
yeah, or if it's ugly, there's a right and a wrong way to deliver that message.
Right, I'm thinking like the Seinfeld episode.
So yeah, it's like I learned that lesson the hard way before I was ever even a published author. I shared, the first few chapters of In the Reins with a family member who, asked, and who I wanted to appease or make happy, right? So I shared these early chapters, not even at the time knowing where I was going to take it. And she put the paper down after she finished the chapters, and she said, "When are they going to get it on already?" Well,
Whoa.
I was like hurt, but B, I was like, it's a romance. Isn't that sort of what you want to know? Like the goal of where it's going to go. So I didn't work on my project for a very long time because I was totally thrown off by her saying that. And then eventually I finally reached out and I said, "Hey, what was that about?" And she said, I've never read a romance novel. I don't like romance. I don't, it's just not my thing. And I was like, oh, well, hello. That was not brilliant of me to give a romance novel to someone who doesn't enjoy romance or hasn't read a romance book. They're not going to understand the genre, right? So you have to know who your audience is and be very careful with who you share early chapters with. I mean, I learned that the hard way.
No, I think that's a good point. Who was it? Somebody wrote for Girl Forward on Goodreads. They wrote, could barely make it through this book because it's just not my cup of tea. Like, that's great. If you don't usually read that type of book, why are you reading it now? Why do you feel the need to say something that's not even really negative about it? It's your opinion.
Right.
And you didn't even read most of it. So how could you, and it's one of those things where I'm just like, you tend to hear the good and the bad, and it's hard not to read the reviews. I know some authors don't want to read the reviews, especially when they've been writing for a while. But you have to take it all into account and take it with a grain of salt, and some of it actually makes it better. As I learned with Confessions of a Timid Writer. So I think being open to criticism is something that most authors are have to get used to, even if it hurts.
Yeah, I think, I think what we were talking about before was early chapters when you're just getting the book
Yeah.
going. But then that is something that a writer or an author has to, or anybody with a creative dream, and they're putting a product out into the world. That's sometimes a surprising thing to realize. Once you put it out there, it is for people to either love or judge and not like. And Amy Elizabeth, who was on my podcast, she was one of the very first authors that I really became friends with. She's written Cut and Run and the Aspen Eye series, and she said to me, she's like, you have to understand, as an author and as a creative, you are not going to be able to please everyone. That's not how the world works. And some people are not going to like the story that you have to tell, and that's okay. But but there's so many more that do, but we focus so much on the one or two negatives, when there's this whole herd of people that are enjoying what we're doing and the words we're writing and the books we're reading. But you do have to prepare yourself for getting a little bit of a thicker skin with and it's hard because it's your creative heart that you're sharing with people.
Well, it's one of those things too, where like most people aren't going to actually comment publicly, right? So I can't tell you the number of messages I receive privately.
Absolutely.
I mean, and then thinking back to like, why are you writing? Like for most of us, it's because we're compelled to write. It's not because we're compelled to be famous or compelled to sell books, or we're compelled to write and share our stories.
Absolutely.
And that's what it is. And so, you have to think when it gets difficult, or when you are writing and you find that you're being challenged, or maybe you're not meeting your goal, or you're having trouble starting your habit, or whatever, that you have to remember why you're writing and just write. Just write, and don't worry about the rest of it, because the rest will come in the end when the story is done.
And don't underestimate the power of being in the flow with a book. I mean, there is nothing like that feeling. It's like riding a horse. How everything just shuts down and you're completely present and you're connected and you're just moving in rhythm with your story, just like you move in rhythm with a horse, and the world just kind of falls away. I mean, that's why I write. That feeling.
Nothing
and then
better than that.
Yeah. And then when I'm at the end of a chapter and my husband reads it back to me and I'm like, who wrote that? Like that is a very cool feeling. And that's why I write. There's nothing like it besides horseback riding.
Yeah. And again, it's one of those things, like when you're doing what you're meant to do, when you're sharing what you want to share, when you're doing something that you're passionate about, as you said, passion project, like, so you have to feed your passion, and these are really great tips that you've put together that help people forget about all the noise and just focus on the passion and how to get it, onto paper or onto that document or whatever. Did you have more?
I do.
I had a feeling.
I do. And if people want an expanded version of some of the tips that I'm sharing, including many more, they can get the free guide, on my website at the Work With Me page. So there's a whole guide with a lot of tips on how to write faster and more often, available complimentary. So you can actually take the stuff and look at it. And I've got an infographic, and you can put it by your laptop while you're writing and really like get into a rhythm with your writing. Yeah. But I wanted to say, like, the most important thing I think I want to communicate is that when you commit to your writing, like on the days that I don't write or something comes up and I'm not able to stick to what I'm talking about here, like I feel this void, or I feel like this regret, or I feel like this guilt, or I feel like
something's missing.
Yeah, it's like that. Is it exhausting or exhilarating piece? Like I said, thinking about the writing or not doing the writing is the stuff that exhausts us. But when I sit down and I commit and I stick to my routine and I stick to these habits that I'm talking about today, there's like a feeling of pride, joy, exhilaration for having stayed true to myself and my creativity and writing and getting that writing done. Is it always awesome writing? No. Sometimes I have to go back and, change it, rework it, whatever I have to do. but I took one step closer to having another book finished, and it's like, and I look at it in small chunks, daily chunks, rather than looking at the whole volume, because if you do that, you'll never be able to sit down and get started and get that writing done.
Now, one of the problems that I used to do early on was I would just go back and rework. When I would read it, I would rework and re-edit, and I just never progressed because I was so focused on making those parts perfect that I never put the whole story together and saw how it all fit. And so that's a common. Why you're laughing? Is that something you wrote down?
I'm laughing because this is tip number 6. Don't edit while you write, because you'll never get anywhere. Yes, because that's
I love how we're on the same page.
I know, you're like reading my brainwaves through the Zoom meeting here. But yeah, I don't edit while you write, because you'll keep going backwards, and the whole goal is to go forward. Get it down, get the whole thing down, and then go back and you do the editing. You do it yourself, you work with a partner, then you get it off to an editor, then you get it to a copy editor, then you have your beta readers to help you catch things. But when you're in the creative process of getting a book to its end, keep going forward. You can always go back, clean up, you can always go back, delete, but you're never going to get anywhere if you keep going backwards and editing and trying to get it perfect as you go, because it's not going to happen.
It's like if you're crocheting or knitting, and I'm sorry if I sound old, but like if you're going to go back and unravel all the time, you're never going to complete the sweater or whatever the heck you're trying to make. So it's like, I used to do that, and I can attest to it. It is just the exercise in frustration. Absolutely. So don't do that.
No, don't do that. Because, and here's the other thing about the editing while you're writing. Editing requires a different part of your brain than the creative side of your brain. So if you're switching back and forth, you can never get in a good rhythm or a good flow. It's almost like multitasking if you throw editing in while you're trying to write, because you're in different parts of your brain and you're not focused on moving in one direction.
It's like you're fighting with yourself, So I think, I obviously with anxiety, I tend to do that all the time. Anyway, my internal monologue is exhausting. But if I focus my internal monologue on the story I'm trying to say and just quiet the other voices, they kind of sit back and wait. And it's good because then you could feel proud. You're like, wow, I got this out there. Because I don't know if you feel like, we tend to be similar in a lot of ways, but like I feel so just complete when I get the words out that have been bopping around in my brain.
Yes, absolutely. There's nothing more exhilarating than that feeling, and taking all the massive amounts of notes and the Surrey conversations you have with yourself and formulating them and getting them into that document, right? It feels wonderful. But we resist it. That's the thing that is the most insane about being an author. And that's why the hardest part is sitting down and just getting started. For some darn reason, there's always this resistance that you have to it's like jumping a huge, hurdle. And then once your butt is in the chair, it just starts working, but getting your butt in the chair is always the hardest part.
Well, which is why I think that ritual is really a good thing, because you kind of like are creating a safe space. You're creating a bubble. You're creating this area where you can do that and get it out. And it's I think it makes a lot of sense. I liken this all towards when I have to go to the gym, right? I know I'll feel better after I go, but the getting there is a real. It's not easy. Like I will come up with 1,000 excuses.
Oh yeah, it's exactly the same thing. But the thing about what I was talking about today with the writing ritual and the routine, I peppered it with a lot of rewards, right? The cup of coffee, the lovely space to sit in, the scented candle, there's little, and then the writing in short bursts, and then the getting up and the taking the little break to stretch and breathe and get a glass of water. Little surprises and little rewards along the way and making progress, and then writing down word count in a journal, like seeing that word count grow. That's a little baby reward. So little rewards are important. Yeah.
Oh, I'm all for positive reinforcement. I will work for food and wine. So, but yes, it's those smaller things too that are, because they're not that small. They add up and they really do make it worthwhile. And then of course you have the end goal. You're like, wow, look at how much I've accomplished. And then you can feel proud. Even if you just sat down for an hour and wrote a little bit, it doesn't matter what you write. It just matters that you did it at all.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we as human beings, we tend to think in these great, huge, monumental ways about things and goals and stuff we have to accomplish. But if you really do one small thing, one small thing, one small thing, one small thing, you move that dial so much faster.
Yeah. And then it's not so overwhelming.
Right. Exactly.
You can put more fun in it and not so much stress, and if you're like me, you're already stressed enough about things that don't matter. So I was laughing about this the other day, but that's a whole other topic. But no, it's I think it's good because those bloggers out there, those people who want to write, those budding authors, or even people who are currently authors can benefit from doing some of these little tips. And then they can go to your website, carlykadecreative.com, to learn more, because you said you had some goodies for everybody, huh?
Yeah, there's a super duper free guide called The Secrets to Writing Faster and More Often, 8 Secrets Every Author Should Know. And it goes into greater detail on some of the topics I touched on today.
That's perfect. And then, we of course want to draw people to your podcast, which is really amazing as well. You have the Equestrian Author Podcast or Spotlight. I'm blanking.
That's okay. The Equestrian Author Spotlight Podcast is a bit of a mouthful, but it's a weekly podcast where I speak with authors of horse books, and we talk about the best topics on earth, horses, and writing about them. So there's, you hear their inspiring stories about what led them to the horse life and what led them to write their books, but also there's marketing tips, writing tips like we talked about today. Insight into how these books came into the world. And it's a great opportunity to learn about the writing process, whether you're an author, a blogger, or you simply love horse books and you love horses. This is a great tool, a great resource, and really fun people. I really enjoy spotlighting fellow horse authors. Authors Unite. That's my thing.
It really is. And it's such an amazing thing. And they could find, our listeners can find your podcast link on your website as well as the bookstore for horse lovers, which we just launched, which, features a whole bunch of authors that we're adding new ones all the time. And on our homepage, you can find a link to your podcast as well, which is so phenomenal. So, so many good things. I think cannot wait to see what you do with your, creative mentorship that you're going to be doing. And it's just lovely. So if you can let everybody know where to find you on social media.
Yes, absolutely. So as you mentioned, the website is carlykadecreative.com. My last name is K-A-D as in dog E. And basically I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter. You can find the podcast, the video version of the podcast, if you like to watch podcasts, on YouTube, and it's all under Carly Kade Creative. The books are available in digital, paperback, and audiobook on Amazon or wherever you like to consume your books. Barnes and Noble, Kobo, iBooks, all the big ones. You can find the In the Reins series, In the Reins Equestrian Romance series there, and get a little bit of your cowgirl on.
I will say, as a personal note, that for any timid riders out there, they will really like the In the Reins series because they will really very much identify with your main character, who is a returning adult equestrian. So I would definitely highly recommend, because I could so much relate to her.
Yes, Devin certainly gets herself into trouble with being a new horse owner of a young green horse on top of all that. So yeah, she has some fun adventures and falls in love along the way.
Yes, she does. And yeah, it's such a great story. So, well, thank you so much for coming on and for talking to us today, or to me. Cannot wait to see what you do with this. I am definitely inspired to make myself get a little bit more of a habit, because I have 3 books right now that I really am not, I'm kind of churning through and taking turns and leapfrogging with. And I think I just need to get focused, sit down and complete one, and then move on to the next. And so that's going to be my goal is to focus on one at a time and create a new habit. So I get to do it every day.